This is our last presentation of this most marvelous Sahavas. Debbie and Peter, thank you so much for your generous sharing. It's just been fantastic, really fantastic. So I'm going to share a little bit as an introduction to Debbie, and I'm going to read part of what I have written down. In their 38 years of marriage, Debbie and her husband Peter have lived in Meherabad most winters. When they're there, Debbie works in the Meherabad Welcome and Information Office, helping to coordinate events. Debbie's first trip to Meherabad was in November 1979. Meeting Mehera, Mani, and all the Mandali at that time made a profound and lasting effect on her. And we're so fortunate today to have her share her story. She will also share some of her meeting of Peter and receiving Mehera's approval of Baba's choice for him as her husband. Debbie holds these memories of Mehera and other Mandali as deep life treasures, and we're so fortunate to have her with us and to hear of these precious experiences. So now, Debbie, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you so much.
Oh, Jai Baba, and thank you, Marnie. Oh, after hearing that, I'm glad that I got out my Kleenex today, because just when we think about any of our connections with the Mandali, if we have a perspective about it, all of a sudden, the preciousness of it, the treasure of it, the amazingness of it comes and hits us home. And I just wanted to make that point today after hearing, I'm glad Peter talked a little bit about the circle, because that's really not in my wheelhouse to talk about the roles and things like that. But I loved how he brought up the Mandali, and that they cared about people. They didn't care what people thought, but they had care for people. And what I want to say is the reason they had care for all of us is because they knew that Baba first loved us, and that's why we loved him, because I heard Mehera tell us that. There was one time on the porch when somebody, I think somebody from the society had a friend who was a nun, and the nun had come there. And of course, Mehera and Mani were very cordial with nuns because they were brought up in Catholic schools. And so the nun was being polite, and then she said, well, you know, God is love. And without missing a beat, Mehera said, yes, God is love, and Meher Baba is God. And I was like, wow, just the directness, the strength of that. And I remember her often saying, you love him because he first loved you. And so I think about when, like, I'll be sharing my stories, but every single one of us has a story. Even if you haven't met the Mandali, you have the story of how Baba has drawn you into his love orbit. And as Peter was saying before, and as Jim Wilson brought out, 98.5% of our lifetimes, I mean, maybe they're over, but right now it's because we have the connection with him that we're even together this weekend. And as Steve says, the wine is certainly flowing. Baba's infinite consciousness. He doesn't need us all to be in one place, but he needs our hearts to be in one focus for him to be here as we are enjoying him this weekend. So I just wanted to say that when I share my stories, of course, they're very dear to me, but I feel that each and every one of us could have that kind of story with the Mandali if you would have had that opportunity to be in their presence. Because Mehera would just catch hold of whoever her focus dropped on. She would sometimes, Mehru and others would have to say, Mehera, the bus is leaving, because who knows, maybe one of you might have had this experience. She might have taken one person, one woman by the hand into her room or Baba's room to show them something, and she would totally lose time. She'd be holding your hand, and it would be a moment that you would remember forever. Would she remember it forever? I don't know. But that is Baba's sharing her with us. And when you think about her being his, loving him as he ought to be loved, he said, Mehera loves me as I ought to be loved. And I love you all for your sakes, but I love Mehera for my sake. And I say, that he shared Mehera with us for those 20 years for our sake. Woo. And also, it made me think of this when Peter was talking, that Baba being the efficiency expert that he is, how loving of him, that when he dropped the body, he gave them then the time, very short time only, for that initial shock and grief. And immediately they had to be in action, not inaction. They had to be acting immediately to fulfill the plans that he had already made for the great darshan. And so you see for those 20 years that Mehera was with us in the body after he dropped the body, he planned it perfectly to give her just enough of that kindly distraction to have her be interested in life again, for her to be interested in life. He had said to her the day that he dropped the body, he had sent a message with Mani, tell Mehera, be brave. And Peter mentioned how they would use Baba's words to help her to even have the will to live, to stay alive, to eat after he dropped the body. So then as time passed and we came along, she had some wonderful, wonderful people to share his love with, because that's all she ever wanted to do. And when she saw how we loved him, knowing that because he loved us, we loved him, well, then she loved us. She loved us for his sake, I must say. And then we were the beneficiaries of that love. And Mani would often say it too, that Baba, and I heard her say this, and I'm sure some of you have also, he told them that we were going to come. He said, you will see my children. And then she said, I remember this, she said, with the pride of a father and a love of a mother, the smile would be on his face. And he would say, you will see them. They will come, my children, this for children. And some of them, and then he pointed his finger like for diamonds, some of them will be gems. And so when we all started to come, well, then it was the fulfillment of his plan for them to not have too much time to think about the fact that he wasn't among them physically anymore. I decided that for today's sharing with you, that I would like to think about what I'm going to share as sort of going to a gallery and seeing a collection. Each one of the little stories I'm going to tell will be sort of like looking at a painting, hopefully with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And there may be some that fit into a series if you're following that analogy. What I'm basically going to do today is talk about Mehera, Mani, a little bit about other women Mandali, and then we're going to have sharing and hear your stories. So this is what Mani said. We have all been representatives, meaning the Mandali, like mini models, or said in a better way, like tools that Baba needs for molding. We each represent something symbolically for the world he does through us, even though we are unconscious of it. To me, what could be the Creator's beloved but his creation? Mehera, to me, I feel positive, represents the world, his creation. This is his beloved in that way too. When I think of Mehera, I think of purity, not only in the sense of being like a nun, because that applies to us all who were with him, but of another kind. It is a purity that is a simplicity of its own. In these roles are the ones who are around Baba, whom he had kept as the innermost circle around him in his proximity and life with him. We are like an architect's models. The model is not limited to the model itself. It is what will be applied to the dimensions it is meant for. So in whatever way Baba worked with his circle, the chosen few, it is meant to be universal in times to come. As we all represent something, I have a strong assurance in my heart, though Baba never said it directly, that Mehera represents his creation, the world. Baba would say, if Mehera is pleased, I am pleased. Sometimes Mehera said, Baba, someone sent this cheese for you. Baba told her to have it, saying, "It is as good as my having it." In other words, if you are pleased, it is good as me being pleased. He was reflecting that role, saying that she should be taken care of, because by that, it is taking care of the world. So that makes me think, when we heard yesterday about seclusion, that Mehera was kept in such strict seclusion, and how Baba had kept the women's ashram up there at the top of the hill for her being sequestered, and for all of her work that he was doing with East and West, rich and poor, animals, all that. So when I think of that, I think how much Baba loves creation. Because if it is an example of his care for the whole creation, the tender care he took of Mehera, well, that says how much he loves everyone and everything. Yeah, and that's all I'll say about that right now. So I'm going to do the sharing of a video. This is a song that Jamie Newell wrote. I was there in India the first trip he took. It was my first trip too, and he wrote several of those songs that just have stayed with us for years and years. And this is such a beautiful song. And it asks the question, of course, Mehera, what manner do you love him that your hold onto him is so strong? We will ask that question. Here we go.
Mehera, in what manner do you love him, that your hold on to him is so strong? We who have just come to know him, it is for this love that we long. For of all of his lovers in creation, it seems that he's closest to you. So Mehera, won't you tell us how you love him, so that we might love him that way too? Well, he came as if an angel sent from heaven, but we found it rather odd to learn that this angel sent from heaven himself had turned out to be God. And a simple heart breaks when one thinks of mistakes made in a moment so weak. And so faced with this task, we now come to ask help towards this goal that we seek. So tell us, Mehera, in what manner do you love him, and what makes your love so pure? That there is no hardship or suffering for him that you would not endure. We who have never been with him still long for a love so true. So Mehera, won't you tell us how you love him, so that we might love him that way too? Well, there's a mist on the field in the morning, but the sun comes to burn it all off. Just as the mist of our clouded imaginations is removed by the warmth of his love, and we see all around his love shining down direct from the heavens above. And we grow close, but yet as close as we get, we never can get close enough. So tell us, Mehera, in what manner do you love him? Though really, it's not hard to tell, for we see it when you look at his picture. Your eyes seem to show us so well. And though it might be rude of us asking, really, what else could we do? For Mehera, if we knew how you love him, then we might love him that way too.
Thank you, Jamie Newell, for writing such a beautiful song. That is the question. What manner do you love him? So I think some of the vignettes from my gallery here will speak to that, perhaps. And also some of your sharing. What work did Baba do through Mehera? As I mentioned before, the 20 years between when he dropped the body and when we all started coming there, she kept alive those stories for us. And then there would be the personal interactions that we had with her that were just amazing. Before I get on to that, though, I just want to say the line in that song, what hardship or suffering for him you would not endure. I just read in Mehera again the other day, her describing about the accident in Prague. And she said she really didn't have the kind of, this is paraphrasing, of course, real-time memory of it happening. Is sort of like something, the way I describe it would be like suspended, where she saw Baba turn around to her and gesture, Mehera, are you all right? And she said, I felt all right, but I knew that something had happened. So I covered, this is in the interaction she's having, I covered this here. I didn't want Baba to see it so that he would be worried about it. Again, that's paraphrasing. She's not thinking about Mehera is hurt. She's thinking, I don't want to disturb Baba by letting him see that I'm hurt. And of course, the all-knowing one knew everything. And he said about that accident that he never would have had her go through that if it wasn't necessary, that she shared in his work. I have it somewhere here. It's just beautiful. He says, don't worry, everything will be all right. I will be all right, and you will also be all right. And then later he tells her, we have many years yet to live. And I just wanted to bring up that because that always made such a huge impact on me when I think about Mehera's suffering. And as Peter had said, what does that mean that the avatar allowed his closest one to also shed her blood on American soil? And that just makes me think of, he's allowing what is the representation of his creation that he loves so much. He's allowing that suffering for that creation because of his work, the work he had to do. And I won't begin to guess what that was. Okay, well, something a little lighter. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about how I came to Baba. I had a cousin I was very close with. We were born 12 days apart, Kent Rogers. And we always liked to talk about, things that teenagers would talk about. I only saw him a couple times a year, but we would talk about thus spoke Zarathustra or be here now. So he decided to hitchhike throughout India and look for God. And that was in 1975 into 1976. And one day I got a letter and it said, I found God and I found him for you too. And by then I was teaching middle school and I had kind of come off my, I was a little more practical. And so I thought, oh, he found God and he found him for me too. This is in the days of letters, long, letters. He bought a book and had it shipped to me from India, I guess. And I saw Baba's picture. And even though I started reading the book, The God Man, I just couldn't, my mind couldn't get around the logic of why would Baba say he's, if he's God, he's going to know he doesn't like that hotel that he has everybody get up and leave from. I mean, my mind just couldn't wrap around it, but I loved his picture. So then later I read the discourses and I got kind of an inner kind of a resonance happening. And I thought, wow, his life story is not, something I can understand, but the words that Meher Baba has given seem to be resonating so truthfully with me. The first time I've ever heard spirituality and what we're all doing here really explained in a way that resonated. So I thought, maybe I will go to India someday and see if he really is God. And in the meantime, my cousin had come back from India and Adike Irani was at the Mehera Spiritual Center. And Kent said, hey, if you come down here, I'll pay your way. I think I got a cheap flight, came down. But because I wouldn't say Meher Baba was God yet, Kent said he wouldn't speak to me. And I was only there for 3 days. So in the meantime, I had an appointment to go meet Adike Irani. So I went in there and I met him and I liked him. I had heard him sing the night before and, he was a charming guy and he was so natural that I felt like I could just spill my guts in front of him. And I told him, hey, my cousin says I have to believe in Meher Baba in 3 days or he'll never speak to me again. And I thought he was going to go, how dare he say that? That's so unkind of him. And he just laughed. Adike Irani just laughed and he says, oh, Baba has many lovers. Some of them are quite mischievous. That was his reaction. I thought, well, it kind of placated me because I loved my cousin. So by the end of those 3 days, I went away singing Meher Baba. Bob Brown had me singing Meher Baba's name to songs. And I liked the Baba lovers so much. And still, I was barely speaking to my cousin. I love the Baba's lovers so much that I had a thought that went through my mind. And it said, you might never become a Baba lover, but maybe you'll marry a Baba lover because you like these people. I hope you're laughing out there because I can't hear you. But anyway, I could see you kind of like, yes, just look at the way I was thinking. So, self-absorbed in my 20s, whatever. What to do. I like these people. I thought, hey, maybe they make good husband material. I don't know. So anyway, let's fast forward to I had that thought of going to India to see, well, is Baba really God? And after that trip to Mehera Spiritual Center, I got cast in the show Oklahoma. And then even then I started going, Oklahoma, didn't I read something about Meher Baba in Oklahoma? And I started to feel kind of like Baba's net coming around me, but when you're not so aware, you just take it for granted and you don't know how non-coincidental it is, if you know what I mean. And I started having dreams. I would see Baba in my dream and he's going like this, and I knew that he was saying, wake up. And by then I had heard that he was the awakener. So finally my dream one night, this is when I'm thinking about going to India, I go, all right. I'll wake up, but just let me sleep now. So I was having this dialogue with Baba, not even thinking that was unusual, that a person would want to talk to somebody they heard about, and then they sang about, and then they saw in a dream. So I thought, well, I better go to India. I made good money on a 4-month run with that show as a touring company. And I ended up in India. And that's when I met the Mandali. So this part of the story, because we're talking about early days with the Mandali, it was 1979 by the time I got there, in overalls and a kerchief. And my cousin had by then said, he was holding his breath and crossing his fingers that maybe I would see the light. So he said, when you get there, you will find that these people called the Mandali, Meher Baba's close ones, you'll find that they feel just like our family. And luckily, we were from a very fun-loving, functional, lighthearted kind of family, at least of that grandparent kind of generation. And so I remembered that. And the first one I can remember meeting, and like Peter said, back in those days, there were sometimes more Mandali than there were pilgrims. First one I remembered meeting was Mani. And she just gave me one of those big old embraces, and it was at Meherazad. And she did this, which I heard her do many times afterwards. And now I work in the welcome office at Meherabad, like Marnie told you, and sometimes I think about Mani, the way she welcomed people, because she said, but this can't be our first time. It feels like you've already been here. Is this really your first trip to India? But I feel like I already know you. So that's how she was. She made everybody feel so welcome and just drew you in with her lightheartedness and her naturalness. I didn't know too much about Mehera, but somebody said, oh, Mehera's on the porch. You can go over and meet Mehera. So then I'm happy-go-lucky. I didn't know much, but I knew she was Baba's closest disciple. So I went over there and I sat on the porch. And since I guess I was the new face that day, she said, well, tell me, how do you know about Baba? And so then I told her. And she was so gracious and so regal, not in an unapproachable way, but just her natural poise was so beautiful. And so I guess, I don't know, my nature was to be also kind of natural and lighthearted. So I said, well, Mehera, I'm just finding out about Meher Baba. And I need to do a little bit of an aside here. Before I met Mehera and Mani in the Mandali, I checked into the Sablok Hotel. And one of the first nights there, before I met the Mandali, I had Baba's embrace in my dream. And I felt myself say, what was that? And then I say, it wasn't a dream. It was his embrace. And I sort of felt like he was saying, you are mine. That feeling like, you are mine. So, but I had gone kicking, resisting. So when Mehera asked me about Baba, I said, well, how'd I heard about Baba? And then I said, I had quite a bit of resistance to him being God. As a matter of fact, this would be how I would say to Baba about how I came to him. And mind you, I look back at this and I think I was rather cheeky. You made me love you. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. You made me want you. And all the time you knew it. I guess you always knew it. You made me happy sometimes. You made me sad. And there were times, dear, you made me feel so bad. Anyway, it went on like that. How's it end? Give me what I cry for. You got the brand of blisses. I'm singing in key J today. I just want you to know, as a music director, I'm acknowledging that. You got the brand of kisses that I die for. You made me love you. So anyway, I sang that to Mehera, and she just kind of smiled and nodded, and I guess she had my number by then, because practically every time I'd see her after that, she'd want to know if I had a story or a song. But that's actually how I felt. I felt like Baba made me love him, and I didn't want to do it. I came kicking, and he made me love him. So I want to get to one of the stories. And again, this is the gallery, so it's not chronological. I'm walking all over the room of this gallery of memories. Because Marnie said I was going to talk about my love story, I thought, well, I better tell that before I run out of time. So anyway, remember I had that feeling that it'd be good if I married a Baba lover, because I think they might be marriage material. So something happened my first few weeks. I got, the first week I was there, I went up to the hill, and that's when we only could stay 4 days a week in Mehrabad. Remember that? And so it was one of the pilgrim stays. I went up the hill, and this was in November 1979. And I don't think there was electricity, but there were those lanterns, and it was such a wonderful, cozy atmosphere at evening arti, not too many people. And I was there, and into the lamplight came this stranger. And I say, some enchanted evening, you may see a stranger across a crowded tomb. And somehow you know, the song goes, somehow you know even then. So I saw a stranger across a somewhat slightly crowded tomb. And that's when I first saw Peter Nordeen. And this story is about the Mandali, not about us. So I'm going to skip ahead and just say that, that we were in a play. It was a lot of fun, and we became friends. And that was it, just friends. And I see that Kebby is there behind. Kebby and Ralph are there as people today, and they were both in the play. But we were both married. Kebby and I were both married to Ralph at the time. But that's okay, because it ended up that I was Zuleika and she was the chief wife. And long story short, Peter played some funny role, and I just thought he was hysterical, da-da-da. Okay, so 3 years passed. I left Mehrabad. We were just friends. And a light bulb went on in my head when I heard that Peter Nordeen was coming to the United States. And something inside of me said, oh, he could be it. I had a feeling. And sure enough, the love story goes on, and I don't want to get into all those details. We'll have to do a Zoom about love stories sometime. So we saw each other for about 2 weeks that year, and I fell madly in love. I guess I don't know if he'd say madly, because he's so much more stoic than I am. But anyway, we fell in love, and it was time for him to go back to India. And I was beside myself, crying and crying. And somebody ran into me on the street and said, why are you crying? I said, because I'm in love with someone and he lives in India. I said, go to India. I said, I don't know how to go to India. Anyway, I don't want to tell all this. It's too long of a story. Anyway, I did end up going to India, because I said, well, to myself, Baba, if you want it, you'll have to work out. How am I going to get to India? I don't have any money. Nashawan had heard of me, the new singer on the block, and he worked for Air India, and they were looking for singers. So long story short, I got a gig just a few months after sobbing my eyes out to go to India. And that's when we got engaged. But before we got engaged, I got to India, and Mehera, in one of those moments of greeting me again after I was there 3 years before, she said, oh, a girl like you, still not married? She took great interest. If she is creation has to keep creating. She loved, families, children, marriages. She recognized how God works that way. So I said, no, Mehera, I'm still not engaged. In the meantime, I'm thinking, I sure would like to be, I said, but maybe you could, if you want to. Again, cheeky. Again, I said, maybe you'd like to think of someone for me. Why did I say that? Because around the corner was Jack Small. She could have said anything. Not that there's anything wrong with that. He is one of my best singing students ever. I mean, I love Jack, but not in that way. So I said, but maybe you could think of someone. She goes, well, if I do, and then the other things happen. So fast forward, we ended up getting engaged. I was only there for like 6 weeks. We ended up getting engaged. And I'll tell you the rest of the story about how, by telling you through the Mehera viewpoint. Mehera called me over to the porch alone one afternoon, almost my last day and Meherazad before leaving. And she said to me, and this is totally just the only time I've been totally alone with Mehera. She said, still nobody? You're not, you haven't found anyone to marry? I don't know how she said it. They're so intuitive. The Mandali are so intuitive. And I said, well, Mehera, actually, there is somebody now, somebody that I'm engaged to. She said, you are? Did he ask you? And I said, no, not well. And I hemmed and hawed. And I know other stories like this where you don't want to tell her the whole truth, but you certainly aren't going to lie. Did he ask you? No. You asked him? No. I didn't want to say that Bauji, we had gone to Bauji, and Bauji said, and Peter told him our plight, that we were in love and we didn't know what to do. I'll never forget that rickshaw ride coming back from Bauji's office. And you love her? Yes. Do you love him? Then get married. And you know, Bauji, two rivers as one. So we felt like we were engaged. Peter never asked me, and I never asked him. But I didn't want to tell Mehera that because I knew enough by then that, you know, the men Mandali, the women Mandali, I didn't know how she would take it to say we went to Bauji's office and we were going to make two rivers one. So she let that slide and she said, well, who is it? You know? And I said, it's Peter Nordeen. And she goes, oh, you are so fortunate. And I thought she was going to say, because he loves Baba so much. And I think she did make some comment. But her first comment after, you are so fortunate. He can fix anything. That was like the greatest. I'll never forget that line. And I can't tell you, I've been nervous sometimes when Peter's had different jobs that he's doing. And I don't understand. That is like Greek to me, any of that stuff. But I'm thinking, how in the world is he ever going to get through this entanglement of that thing there and that thing there? And what if the clients don't like it and they'll blame Peter? You know, my worry mind going. And then I always go back to Mehera said he could fix anything. And so it has calmed me. And then she asked me, well, that's very good. Now, how old are you? And I said, well, I'm going to be 31. And she said, And she shook her head like this. And she was thinking about children. And then she mentioned somehow children. I wish I would have written down every word. So I said, why, you think we should? She goes, if only it would have happened a few years earlier. No, but what? And then she somehow got out of me. I said, well, that's all right, Mehera. What we'd really like is we'd like to live in India. And she said, very good, very good. He can build you a small house here and you can take care of him. You can make his meals. You can wash his clothes. You take care of him. And just telling you that right now, I almost feel like crying because I think she was telling me that what she had been given to do in those early years, which we heard she had even become Baba's orderly at the young age of 17 or 18, whatever it was, to help prepare. She prepared Baba's meals. She would get his cup. She would comb his hair. That's taking care of someone like a mother takes care of someone, but also how you take care of someone you love. So she was giving me instructions on what I would do to take care of Peter while he worked very hard. So I always remember that. And it was one of the happiest days of my life. And then I said, but Mehera, nobody knows yet, and we're not telling anyone. I won't tell anyone. I won't tell anyone. You know, she was like, to keep our secret. We didn't want to because we, again, didn't know, because Peter was a resident. And when you're a resident, you're not just supposed to hop off with, I was called Delectable Debbie in the Times of India when I went and sang there at the hotel that Air India owned. I mean, that's how they do their, you know, is it called alliteration? Anyway, Delectable Debbie, and the picture of me like this. And so all of a sudden, one of their young residents who they appreciated how hard he worked too, you're going to run off and marry Delectable Debbie. Anyway, so we didn't want to tell anyone. I won't tell anyone, she said. And that was so sweet of her. But unbeknownst to me, and Peter has a whole long story of us getting together, and it's in that book, Mehera Baba's Next Wave. Unbeknownst to me, Peter had felt so strong internally that, yes, this is what Baba wanted him to do, get married to me. But he had an inkling of a thought that flitted through his mind. And I'm glad he didn't tell me till afterwards. He said he had the thought, if Mehera says something, I'll know 100% that this is what Baba wants. So I didn't know that I would get choked up just telling you that, because, wow, I'm really glad that I did get Mehera's punctuation mark on it. And anyway, that's our story. And there's more story to tell about other details, but I want to stick to the Mandali, not get tangential about our life. I'm going to keep going here about Mehera stories. I got to make sure I keep, let me see. Wow, I only have 45 minutes left. Do I have 45 minutes left, but half hour is for sharing?
We can do half hour of sharing, but it doesn't have to be a full half hour. If you have more stories, I'm sure people would love to hear them.
But
So,
is that how much time? I mean, has the time flown so much? Because I'm on a different time. I just wanted to make
Yes.
sure. Do we have
Yes.
45 minutes total left?
yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Oh my gosh. I hope I'm giving you enough Mehera and Mondi.
You're
Okay.
doing
Well,
great, Debbie. It's great. You're doing
we're going to
great.
stick on Mehera then. We're going to stick
No.
on Mehera for a while, because
These are wonderful.
I've got a page of gallery shots here.
No.
Okay, so when Peter and I did get married, fast forward again, and we, after going to India as pilgrims for a while, because Mani Asarani, the chairman, my goodness, there were like 5 or 6 couples that got married that year, and it was just too much. And we weren't all supposed to just assume that it was okay to just flit off and get married and think that we could come back and be residents. So we understood that. But what happened was, after a couple years of, he's on one side of the Pilgrim Center, I'm on the other, and we start working again, taking up jobs in the reception office for me, and of course him all over Meherabad. Mani said, yes, we could have staff quarters. So we were in staff quarters, and I went a couple of years ahead. Anyway, that's how we ended up back at Meherabad. However, the earlier Mehera compound, we lived in the compound when we first were able to afford to go to India, and Mani did give us entry visas to be able to stay there. And Mehera, as I said, would love to, she liked details of people's life, and she wanted to see where I was cooking for Peter. And I didn't cook full meals. It was just like a little kitchenette, but she wanted to see our room. So this is another time that really stands out in my mind, because it's so familial, is that Mehera came, and I don't think Mani was there. Mani might have been she was probably working in the office, because we lived in the trust compound in a room next to where Khorshid lived. So, excuse me. So Mehera came one day, and she was to see where we lived, and she took my hand, and that's the part I wanted to tell you about. Come and show me where you make tea for Peter. So there we were, like, there's been a few times in my adult life that I've held hands with someone besides my husband or my mother. I'm adults. Children, of course, I've held hands with. But to see that kind of naturalness, and that's what I meant at the very beginning of this sharing, is that she would do that for any of us women, not men, of course. She wouldn't be touching a man, but she would grab your hand and say, come here, show me this. And that just stood out in my mind as, again, her care about family life, and how you are with someone you love. You make them tea. You think of them before you think of yourself. And that's what Mehera did. She always thought of Baba before she thought of herself. Have you ever seen a film where somebody is holding an umbrella over Baba, and it's in the late 60s, and you could tell he's not doing well. And they weren't holding that umbrella over Baba in the proper way to get the shade. She grabs it just like, and she's not thinking, oh, what does my sister Mandali think? The way she grabbed it, just like Peter was saying that those men were like very natural in their arguments during their meeting on Amartithi. She was there with the other women, Mandali, and I can't remember who it was that was holding it, but they weren't holding it right. She grabbed it and she held it so firmly over Baba, and then the smile. And Baba, I don't know if it's this film or another one, Baba would take her hand and kiss it. He would allow others to kiss his hand, but Mehera's was the hand that he would kiss, which makes me think of another film clip. You've seen it where Baba and Mehera are going into Baba's house, and just behind them is Naja. And Peter gave us some good stories about Naja, Baba's cousin. And she is standing right behind them, and Baba has just like kissed Mehera's hand and walked in, like, bride and bridegroom, beautiful, going into the house. And you see the back of Baba's head and a little braid there. Naja looks at the glory of the glow of, Baba and Mehera together, and she can't resist. She taps that braid on Baba. He doesn't react. He just keeps going. And I just remember the look of her hand as it's drawing away from Baba. Precious, the love that Baba and Mehera had, and of course, all those around that witnessed it. I'm hopping again. In Mehera, the book talks about Naja at one time, other people feeling envious of Mehera. And she was feeling envious of Mehera, and somehow Baba came to know. And Baba called her over and said, no, don't you know, it is like Mary and Martha in the Bible. And they all were pretty versed at these because many of them went to Catholic schools. Martha is the one who works for me. So never think, I'm paraphrasing, that I don't love you, but your love is like that, and you work and serve me. Always remember, and don't think about what anybody else is doing. Keep focused. Paraphrased again. So I thought that was just beautiful. Mehera liked quick songs. She called them quick. In other words, happy, quick songs. And I wasn't in India this one year that my two sisters got to go. They went to India, and I think it was Amartithi when it was still being held at the Sabha Mandap because it was small. And somebody had just sung a very serious, one of those kind of serious songs where you're spilling your guts and stuff. And I'm sure it was a beautiful song, but maybe that wasn't the occasion for it. Let's just put it that way. And Mehera looked over to my sisters, and believe me, when we're together, I'm the quiet one, okay? Even though they won't agree to that. Anyway, my two sisters that went to India at least, and the third one's talkative too. So anyway, she looks at them and she goes, I guess it was their turn, and she saw they were up, and she goes, sing. And she gestures for something quick, and dance too. So she wanted something quick and peppy after the slow song. She called them quick songs. Margaret Crast talked about Mehera's focus, and Peter had said something about attentiveness as well, is that Mehera had such incredible focus. If she knew something was to please Baba, she was 100% focused and not distracted. So what it was swimming. She became a very good swimmer, and Margaret said she was one of the best students she had. Just think about what that means. Margaret taught the top dancers of the world, and you have to be very focused to get that technique she was teaching, that ballet technique. But she said Mehera was the most focused student she had ever seen. And I'll slide into a little Mani story with that. Margaret taught Mani to swim also. And Mani would share with us this life story, which is that Mani just couldn't get it. She kept sinking and sinking. And I'm sure you've seen it maybe in some of the talks on video. But Mani said, as soon as Margaret taught her to look up when she was down, she said, as soon as I looked up, then the rest of me followed and I came up to the surface and I wasn't sinking anymore. And so Mani would use that as an analogy. Mani loved to use illustrations, and that was one that she used to always look up. Okay, let's see. I'm still looking. Oh, I want to tell you this one story. This is a Mehera story. We were living in India, and we would go back occasionally. And there was a couple that we knew, a Baba couple, that were going to have a baby. It was their first baby. And what happened was something very sad by our standards, of course, the way we see only with human eyes. But that baby was full term, and then something was discovered that it stopped breathing and died inside of the full term mother, our friend, the Baba lover. And it was just devastating for the whole family and for all the Baba people who knew them. Just so sad. And there was nothing to induce the labor. The doctor said just to let it be. So that woman and her husband lived for 2 or 3 days, knowing that they bore that kind of suffering, I must say. So I brought it up to Mehera. I can't even remember why I brought it up to her, but I did bring it up to her. And she was very interested because, again, families, children, and she was very calm. And she told me exactly what to communicate. She gave me 2 rose petals and told me that as soon as we got back, I was to tell both the husband and the wife to eat the rose petals totally. And I think she had looked at Baba's picture. Can't remember that. Anyway, this is what she told me. I remember that. And I carefully took the petals back, gave it to them as soon as I could. They both ate the petals. And about 9 months later, I could be exaggerating because I'm not, Peter's the one with the dates. Anyway, let's just say it didn't take very long. They had a healthy, bouncing baby boy. And within about another year, year and a half, they had a second one. So I just wanted to share that. It was just Mehera's care and love about, human suffering and care for Baba's lovers. She loved Baba's lovers, Baba's family. Peter gave me permission to tell this next story. I'll tell this story and then we can start sharing. We'll just have to have another Sahavas for my Mani stories. What can I say? I had no idea I could talk this long, and I hope I haven't talked too long. Anyway, so Peter said I could share this because it is sort of my story too. But while we were living over there, Peter would occasionally be called to Meherazad to do some tree trimming, because one of his first jobs in life was as a lumberjack. He grew up in Upper Michigan and with the trees. So he's great with the chainsaw and all that stuff. So when the women Mandali would go to Meherabad twice a month, sometimes then they would get work done at Meherazad that needed to be done. And there needed to be some pruning of these dead limbs and trees and all that kind of stuff. And years later, I actually remember hearing, because I wouldn't go out there to see this, but he had to go out there and was like way on top of trees, trimming them. And anyway, let's get back to this story. So what happened was he trimmed some trees, he trimmed some bushes, and he came back home. They went, and the day seemed right. And then we went out to Meherazad either the next day or whenever the next Meherazad day was. And of course, if he was telling this, he would get all the stories. Do you want to pipe in? If you're listening, Peter, if I'm getting the details wrong, you should pipe in. Anyway, I do remember that I believe it was Goher that called him over, or it might have been Mehera. What have you done? And he goes, what do you mean? What have I done? He said, do you know what you've done? And he goes, no, what have I done? You trimmed off the last graft of the mango tree from what the must gave Baba on the sprouting thing. This is what I mean. I don't have all the details. Okay. And he said, I did. And I mean, he didn't know that he did. He thought he was just trimming something that looked pretty bad. So she said, yes, you did that. And you have to tell Mehera. We can't tell her. The women Mandali they knew how much Mehera loved nature. Her gardens were beautiful. Her favorite color was green. She loved horses. She loved dogs. Cat lovers, I'm sorry to say, she liked cats, especially Pegu, but she didn't like them that much because they killed birds. I'm sorry, that's what I heard. So anyway, Goher says to him, well, you're going to have to tell Mehera. And he said, okay. There wasn't time to tell her that day. So I think we had like 2 or 3 days to sweat it out. And I have never, in 38 years of marriage, of course, we weren't married that long then, but I've never since then ever seen him so stoically, well, worried wouldn't be the word. He actually told me later that he thought Mehera might, because of this terrible thing he had done, we might have to not be residents anymore. I mean, he did not want to displease her, of course. So what happened was we went out there that day, and before it was time for him to go over to the porch to tell her what he did, the other women Mandali must have seen him and said, we were all praying for you this morning. It was, let's just say, if he was sweating, he would have been going like this by then, because we all prayed for you, because you're going to have to tell Mehera. Again, repeating that message to him. So in the meantime, it is time. They said, you can go over. We've told her you have something to tell her. So he goes over to the porch all alone. There might have been somebody right behind the door, but all alone on the porch. He's on the ground. She's on the porch. I was in the blue bus on Baba's bed that he dropped the body on. And I was holding that sheet with my head against the bed, repeating Baba's name, internally as much as I could, because by then I could see how upset he was. Well, it has a happy ending. He told Mehera what he did. He asked for her forgiveness. And she goes, oh, first of all, she said, you did that? You, in other words, you're an intelligent person like you would, she didn't say all those words, but that was the implication. Yes, Mehera, please forgive me. And she said, who am I to forgive? She turns and looks at Baba. Ask Baba's forgiveness. And then she says, wait right here. She went into the kitchen and she, on her little zapats, she comes back out. And what do you think? She brought a huge piece of cake for Peter. She handed him the cake. He took it. She said, and he didn't eat it right there. He was turning to leave. And then she got one more little question in there. She said, I can understand how one of those village gardeners might have done that. But you, Isn't that wonderful? There was no, she was so loving in her forgiveness. She's just the supreme example. So what manner does she love Baba? Always Baba first in everything. And then in the hearts of his lovers, she's still loving the Baba in the hearts of his lovers. And my last little vignette before we go to open sharing your questions and answers is this. One time, Gary Kleiner was asking Erich, Erich, after all you Mandali go, do you think people will still come to Meherabad and want to be here? And Erich said, what would have happened to you all if we would have said that when he left our midst? And I remember Arnavas saying, because I asked her, can I share this, what you've just said? Of course. Why are we telling you all these things? Meaning not just me, but you people. Why are we telling you everything? You must share them with everyone. And then one time, Mani was down. And usually it was Mani who would cheer Mehera up, especially in those early days, of course. These were the latter days, maybe a few years before Mehera dropped her body. And Mani was feeling just missing Baba, was feeling down that, Baba was gone. And she must have said something to Mehera. And Mehera, just as we heard Mehera did at the first Amartithi, even though when Baba dropped his body, she was comforting people. And the first Amartithi, she again was comforting women who would come there and cry and cry and cry. In her grief, she was comforting others. So she says, when Mani said, Mehera, he's gone, and whatever, I don't know the exact words. She says, oh no, Mani, we are still so fortunate to be alive, because while we are still alive, we can remember what it was like to be with him. Isn't that beautiful? While we are still alive, we can remember what it was like to be with him. And that's what we're going to be telling others, what it was like to even be with the Mandali and with each other. And lastly, this is how I wanted to end. Casey Cook, who stays at Meherazad, boy, she must have a really good story, lots of stories to tell. Anyway, she said one year the ladies were getting ready to go on their annual trip to Pune, which they did during a very hot time of year. They would go, and they were getting ready to go. And the road to Pune was worse than ever. I don't know if you remember some of those early, the taxis couldn't go over 20 miles an hour. I mean, it was pit, everywhere, just horrible holes everywhere, really bad. So they were preparing to go, and Casey's helping with the packing or something. I don't remember exactly the detail. And she says to Mehera, she says, oh, Mehera, maybe this trip to Pune, Baba will have fixed the road for you. And without missing a beat, Mehera answers back, oh no, he's already done so much for us. He's waiting to see, what will we do for him? Every time I think of that, I just think, what are we going to do for him? So with the supreme example of the Mandali, we can take their example of cheerfulness, honesty, naturalness, hard workingness, and let our lives themselves be his message of truth and love. That's what he asks of us. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba, Devi. Thank you so much. That was such beautiful sharing. Those stories are amazing. And they just, I'm sure it's true for others, that it just takes us right back to Meherazad and being there, and you can just feel the air. Thank you so much. It was beautiful.
Oh, I'm so happy. And again, I didn't spend that much time, but as any of us, one moment is a memory of a lifetime. So thank you, Baba, for having the Mandali be there so we could be with them.
Yes. So we have about a little bit over 20 minutes left. This would be the time for people to ask Debbie questions, to share your own stories. We won't have time for everyone, but we'd love to have people share your thoughts, your experiences. So don't be shy, because otherwise we're going to run out of time. Seal, you go ahead. Why don't you start us? That's perfect.
Okay. Well, this is an experience I had on Christmas Day at Meherazad. Excuse me if I cry, I do that. So anyway, the entertainment on the porch was various, and then people got up and we sang the Christmas carols, and so a group of people got up on the not this stage, the porch, to sing Christmas carols. And here I was in the back, the very back of the seated Mandali and then the seated pilgrims. And I was having a fight with my ego because I wanted to go up and sing on the porch. But my ego said, no, that's an egotistical thing. You should, you're laughing. You don't need to go up there. And so I had this back and forth. And then finally I just said, well, I just want to. I like to sing. So I finally went behind everyone and went up on the porch and joined the group and sang. And then at the very end, they said, now would everyone file past and say Merry Christmas to Moni and Mehera and Goher and all the women. And so we got to do that. And so I was able to hold Mehera's hands and say, Merry Christmas, Mehera, and I'm ready to move on because I don't want to hog her, you know. And she stops me and she said, never hesitate to sing for Baba. Do it for him. And now, how would you know? I was behind everybody. And why? I mean, she just knew that I had that conflict, but then I went up there and she told me, don't hesitate. I'm sure she's told you the same thing, but so now I don't hesitate. I just love to do it. So,
Oh,
did you have anything similar, Debbie? Oh,
Well, as I said, I was rather cheeky, and she knew that I wasn't hesitating when it came to singing. But that just touches my heart so much because it punctuates how intuitive the Mandali were. She's not standing there thinking, Dale needs to get this message from me. I am a channel of Baba's, she doesn't think like that. As Peter said, with those Vijnani sanskars, everything's just moving towards Baba. So to me, that is just another example. And I've had other situations, not with Mehera, but with other Mandali, where they've said something that I needed to hear that only Baba could have made them say. So that to me is an example of that, what happened to you. And I'm happy to hear it as a music teacher.
mhm. Oh, thank you, Dale. That's a wonderful story. Thank you. Kevy and Ralph, you have your hand up, and can you unmute?
Hi,
Nice to see
Debbie, Jai Baba. Can you tell us how you came to be at Meherabad for Baba's 100th birthday?
Oh, okay. For Baba's 100th birthday. I mean, I hope I'm remembering if you know something that I don't know, but Kebby was one of my roommates, and we were ever since Kebby and Debbie. And so great to see you here. We came to be there for Baba's 100th birthday. It had been after I had cancer. I guess I had gone back once or twice, and Monty knew that we stayed usually for 3 or 4 months if we could. And right around, I think it was maybe November when we were getting ready to go, we got a letter that Heather had written on Monty's behalf, wanting to know if indeed, are we coming in November? Because Monty had something in mind for Baba's 100th birthday. And it was going to be for the residents who were there because the pilgrim season was going to be closed. So I was just like thrilled to know that, we were temporary residents, and by then we were staying in staff quarters again. But to know that we were 100% residents for January and February of that year. So that's how we came to be coming there for Baba's 100th birthday. And Peter helped build the set. And in the letter itself, Heather had said, this is what Mani is envisioning. And Heather was trying to wrap her brain around it too, but immediately I got it. it was sort of like it's a performance piece, a spectacle. So there wasn't going to be any dialogue at all. It was all going to be sort of like pantomime with just a few monologues from Mother Earth, and then different stages of what heaven was doing when Baba was born. And right away, I thought, it's Baba. Because if Baba gives you an assignment, he starts getting your wheels turning because he's chosen a tool. I'm a tool in this case. You're a tool in many cases. We're all his instruments. Or as Ross Keating says in his song, we are puppets, Baba's puppets. Each one has a different makeup. We're all working for Baba. So I guess Mani knew to tap, Baba knew to tell Mani to ask Heather to tap us, because I would get the idea of how the music should be. And so then I got to put the arrangements together for the music. Is that what you wanted to know?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. It was a wonderful memory. Wonderful.
Oh, Marianne's raising a hand.
There. Well, this is a different sort of story, and I can't even tell exactly when it was. It was in the 70s. And it was the day that the women were coming to the tomb, and I was going to sing Begin the Begin. And I had been practicing, and of course I was very nervous. But all the women were there, and it was my turn to sing in the tomb. I was in the tomb, and I opened my mouth and nothing came out. And everybody knew that I was going to sing it, so everybody sang it, and it was fine. But then it was all, we did everything the whole time there. And then the women were all walking over toward Mansari's kitchen, over there into the compound. And I was feeling terrible, that ego again, beating myself up, wearing a hair shirt. Oh, I didn't love Baba enough. And I felt terrible. So everybody went over with the women and I just stayed there on the tomb veranda. And then I walked over to where by the fence. And I was just feeling so terrible and beating myself up and feeling I didn't love Baba. I turned around and I looked, and Mehera was standing over by the tomb, but a little away from it, looking out toward Erangel. And her head was sort of in the air, and she looked like she was having a conversation. And I just watched her, and nobody was there. And I just watched her, and I didn't really see just a little tiny bit of her face, but I saw her kind of bow her head and nod, and she put her hands together, and then she turned around and she walked over to me and she said, Baba wants me to tell you that he loves you very much. So
That's so beautiful. And it's so good to see you, my dear. It's so good to see you. And I couldn't have dreamed I'd hear like 2 singing stories in a row. This touches my heart so much, because if you wouldn't have, you call it your ego, but if you wouldn't have had the quote failing of not being able to sing, but everybody sang it, so Baba got the song sung, you wouldn't have been so over there by yourself having those feelings, that then he could come over and love you so much by having Mehera reach out to you. I mean, it's another example of his love.
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's just beautiful. What a great story.
Oh, thank you, Marianne. So who else would like to? Renee, you have your hand up? You want
Yeah,
to
this is just something short, because, and some of you have heard this before, but my first trip to India in 71, Mehera was still deeply in grief. And it seemed like all the time she would at the teas, there were very few people there. So we kind of spent a lot of time going to tea with her, like every day. It was great. But she would often just sort of feel like she was only partly in that world and really with Baba. And that was my first trip. And I didn't know, having grown up Catholic, what it meant to suddenly be a Baba lover. What was I going to have to do now? Because I hadn't read God Speaks or the discourses or anything, but I was kind of getting an inkling looking at how the women Mandali were living. And I was thinking, well, am I supposed to become a nun or something? I was like really confused about, what life was going to be like, having been sort of a hippie, and college days, and then all of a sudden India. And so one time at tea, Mehera asked me to stay afterwards, and everybody else left. And we're sitting at the little table there, and she gets really close to me, and she's completely different. And she begins to talk to me about what the life of the brahmacharya is, the life of the celibate, of the followers, the close ones, and what their life is like. And she explains to me that is not the life for everyone. Not even if, even some of the women Mandali were married, it was like an answer to this question. And she just took it on and came and sat and was like right there, explained it to me, told me it was okay to go on with my life in a natural way, whatever was coming. And that was such a relief. And I never really saw her like that any other time, except one time when she told me about the accident after I'd had an accident. But that attention to all of us, like she was our guide. She was speaking for Baba. So that was really interesting. Yeah.
It's a fantastic story, Renee. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Who else would like to, or George? Someone over there, you have to unmute. There you go.
George.
George, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. No, I usually don't share. This is kind of a little more awkward for me, but since Debbie's here, I think it was important I do share because she's a factor in one of the stories anyway. So I should mention it. But I had the phenomenal, good love, Baba's love, fortune to be able to share with Mehera a couple of times in my life in different times. And once Mehera asked me for a song and I played her a song, and so I did. So but the one that's related to Debbie is that I wrote a poem once, and she might remembers this, but I wrote a poem and apparently it really touched Mehera. So she asked me for a copy of it. Very, very honored. And I wrote it, and so I gave her a copy. But Debbie helped me. You helped me to get that to her, and I really appreciate that so much. That you were a factor in kind of the conduit. You're the one that told me that she wanted it anyway, and I did that. So I appreciate that a lot, and that's why I'm sharing today. And that was back in the '80s. So
your poem really touched her heart. I mean, for Mehera to ask for a copy.
Yeah. Now, there's one thing about it that I felt real bad about. It's because I didn't know how to type, and I was really embarrassed about it. But back now I can type. But I mailed a typed copy later, and I never heard if she ever got that typed copy because I felt so bad that I had to handwrite it when you were the one that told me it should be typed. But so I wrote it back then. So, but I tried to make it really neat, so it was easy.
Oh, I think handwritten has more character. I'm surprised I told you to type it, except for if your handwriting was like mine. That's probably why I said to type it. Okay. But I may have not been there when the typewritten copy, but rest assured, if it got to India and it had Mehera's name on it, it got to her.
Yeah, Bob, I really appreciate that. So.
Thank you, George. Thank you. And I see that Nasreen has her hand raised. Can you unmute, please?
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, Nasreen.
Yes, I have a short story about Mehera. And then I came to India some years ago. And I went, after I bowed down to Baba's shrine, then I went to Mehera. And I was thinking, I was not sure if Mehera is eternal or not. Then I told her in my heart, the same day, it was Merazad Day, because it was a big crowd. All of a sudden, Casey ran to me and hold my hand and said, come on, I want to show you something. She took me to Mera's room, which her bed was there. And she told me, do you see Mera's picture here? I said, yes, it's so beautiful. She said, every morning I go clean everything and put the roses in Mera's picture. So this morning, so this was the time I was bowing down to Mera's shrine to ask a question. Then she said, this morning, at very early in the morning, when I went to clean the everything and put the roses there, I saw your image in her eyes.
Oh,
Jai Baba.
Jay Baba.
Thank you.
That is so beautiful. So
Thank you.
beautiful. And that Casey would spontaneously then go the full step of telling you and drawing you there. I
Yes.
mean, just Baba's ways are so dear.
I was very happy to hear that.
Very
you know.
happy.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Jai Baba.
Thank you, Nasreen.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Jai Baba. Steve, you have your hand raised?
Yes, just quickly, I know we're almost out of time. Just want to share that years ago, Robin and I were walking around Washington, D.C. We went past a storefront and we saw a T-shirt in the window that said, "Oh God, save me from your lovers." And we knew that was for Erich, so we bought the shirt and we sent it to him. Didn't mention who we were, we just sent it to him, and we heard later that he was very fond of it. Last time I was in India, I told Devana that story, and she said, "Oh, it was you guys." I always wanted to know where that came from. And then she told me the other part of that story, which was he was very fond of it. And one day, some young man, I think, said, "Wow, that's a really cool T-shirt, Erich." And she just grimaced because she knew it was going to happen. And he took the T-shirt off and gave it to the kid. And then what happened was she and Shelley and Casey made another one. My understanding is with their names on it. And I think that's what he was buried in.
Oh,
Fantastic story, Steve.
I remember that shirt. I mean, he loved it.
Yeah.
That was it. Now, let me get this straight. You saw God, say it again. God save me from your lovers?
"Oh God, save me from your lovers." Yeah, we just saw it in a storefront, so we bought it.
Just in a regular storefront, not like at a spiritual center or anything.
Well, I don't remember what the store was, but
No, but
probably just a T-shirt store.
A
or something
regular
like
old
that.
store.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was perfect.
It was the T-shirt store.
Steve, I remember seeing Erich wear that often during my years at Mehrabad that brought me to Merazad, where Erich was. And he really did. I know I thought, oh, that's the perfect T-shirt for Erich. I had no idea that you and Robin had sent it to him. But he wore it many, many times, actually. I think.
Well, the main point to me is not that we found it and sent it, but that he was able to, apparently because he liked it so much, he was able to express in jest what he had to put up with for so long. Jai Baba, what a great guy he was.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba. Well, we are out of time, I'm sad to say. And this is the conclusion of our Sahavas. Debbie and Peter, once again, thank you so very much. And I'm going to pass this over to Steve, who will bring us to a conclusion. Thank you.
Well, yeah, and that's really pretty much the conclusion. Thank you so much for your generous time and sharing of your talents and your experiences. Thank you so much. At the end of a Sahavas years ago, Jim Wilson said, "I would like to thank everyone who was part of making this Sahavas happen. And they are Meher Baba." And that's really what it all boils down to. You know, we have to have hosts and we have to have guests and we have to have facilitators. And who's the host and the guest and the facilitator, right? It's Baba. But he does do it through us, not just through the facilitators, but through the guests and through those who come to hear the guests, all of you, this beautiful mosaic of Baba lovers. And I started Sahavas with Baba's quote, Sahavas is the intimate giving and taking of love. And yesterday there was so much give and take that I experienced, but today I really felt the love. And I'm so grateful to you all for everything that you shared. Just, his love just emanates through you. I mean, I think this is probably a beginning of a new era of Sahavas for the Oregon group. So I'm really thankful that you're all here to help us launch it. Thank you so much. And
Yes.
I think with that, we should just begin and end in Baba, because all things do. So, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Thank you all so much. It was great.
Jai Baba.
Hey, Baba.
There.
Baba.
Jai
Thank you
Baba.
both.
Ah, there they are.
You are.
Peter
Love
and
you, my Oregon family.
much.
Jai Baba. Thanks
Jai
for
Baba.
inviting us. Great seeing old friends
Thanks for coming.
and new friends too. Jai Baba.
Hey, Baba.